Welcome in, everybody. Welcome to the Citizen Central podcast. Oh boy, it's a different bit of a podcast, and we haven't done this in a little while, but this is our monthly show where I bring in some creators and some folks from around the community that we like to talk to about games and things, and get them all together for a little roundtable so we can throw stuff at each other and talk smack to each other and hopefully come away with a couple smiles and laughs. And if you've seen this show before, then you notice we got a little bit of a new setup. A little more space for the people to talk, see their pretty faces. So, without further ado, I want to get right into everything that's going on, because we're going to have a good talk today about 4.1.1, kind of what's going on with Star Citizen. Is this patch really as good as they say? And how you guys are feeling about it in terms of it being one of these quote-unquote smaller updates. So I'd like to start off by introducing our guests. Let's start with Griffin Gaming over here. My man is not just a stalwart of the community, a good friend, and also the leader of Soul Citizens, but also putting on an event this summer. A little pickup for the U.S. folks, because we can't fly all the way across the sea for everything. And so I want to give you the chance to talk a little bit about that, but also introduce yourself, your community, your content, where you come from. Lay it on us, man.
Sure. Hey, good morning and greetings to everybody. I'm Griffin Gaming RPG. I'm one of the producers with the Soul Citizens. We're a community group here that's been around for, in fact, this year we celebrated our 5th year streaming this year. And as always, I'm happy to be here with Space Tomato. It's been a little while, but also got some great faces surrounding me, so I'm excited to be here. The event you referenced is an event that some of you may have seen being advertised called Quantum Vegas 2955. Basically, the idea is that we're trying to put together a community event that happens annually in Las Vegas. And the idea is that we partner, kind of similar to how Vegas is. We're trying to do something like that. So we've got community folks there that are going to be there. We wanted the tomatoes to be there, but they're going to be on the other side of the globe, so we couldn't get them.
Yeah.
But we've got people like Paul Shelley, Starjump Grimm. Natronics is going to be there speaking. Then we've got people like Tyler Whitkin, Sean Tracy, Galactica. DePoets is going to be there. Several folks. Nick at Night. We got a lot of folks that are on the list of people. Commander France coming from Beacon Events. And we've got sponsorships. We've got giveaways. We're having a big Bar Citizen for the night before, as always with most conventions or events. Nice. I should say. Bar Citizen that Friday night. But it's July 12th, Las Vegas. We know it's a trip for some people, but we want it to be a trip. We want people to make a Vegas weekend out of it. That Sunday we're going to do, what's it called? There's Bar Citizen, Star Citizen, and there's Brunch Citizen. The next day we're going to have brunch together. So anyway,
all kinds of
basically
citizens.
It. Yeah, you can make a weekend out of it, basically, if you come to Vegas. So hopefully, if you have any questions, there'll be a link for it. And yeah, thanks for letting me share. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Do the people get free ice cubes for the Las Vegas heat?
No. You know what? The place is completely air conditioned. We're having it at Area 51, which is this huge, brand new space geeky entertainment center that's amazing, over 200,000 square feet, and it's going to be really cool. We got a lot of giveaways. CIG's been very generous with us. We're doing some really amazing giveaways, so cool, hopefully folks can make it out there for it.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, if you guys are looking for, like, the one of the best parts about Star Citizen is this community. They come together, we stay together, even if you're not, like, geeking out about the game, it's always just nice to hang out with people who have similar interests, because a lot of those things line up. It's a good time. So if you haven't been to one of these, I would check it out. And it sounds like there's a good one in Vegas. A little excuse to go party. You didn't hear it from me. Thank you, Griffin. Leaf X, my friend, how you doing, dude?
Hello.
Let us know where your content comes from.
Yeah, well, I mean, I ain't doing anything as cool as Griffin is. That sounds really sick. Yeah, no, I mean, I've been making videos on Star Citizen for 5 years now. I've been playing since 2019, so I'm a bit of a latecomer, I guess, which is crazy to say for a game still in alpha. That 2019 was the late come, but Yeah, so I've been in it for a while. I've been keeping up with stuff. This nerd over here has been getting me to edit some of his videos. So that's a lot of my news. Actually, is I keep up with the in-depth stuff. Space Tomatoes got some of the best recollection of history that I've ever seen for this game. So it's really easy to follow along with him. But yeah,
Takes
just
up
doing
too
my own
much
stuff,
space in
having
the
fun.
head, dude.
Is that what it is? You're trying to fill it up?
Yeah,
Now?
it's just.
Yeah, so just been coming from the Rocket League scene, commentating Rocket League. I just didn't really want to make content around that. And Star Citizen had a really good, I guess, sandbox to play around in. So I started making content in that for the past 5 years, streaming, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. But again, no large events in Vegas. So that's the end of my spiel.
Yeah, we can't all pull that off. Have you ever considered doing like casting for some of the stuff that goes on in Star Citizen?
Yeah, I actually did cast a couple races
Recently, right?
Yeah, it was about a year ago now. I think it was like the XGR stuff. So yeah, there was a few races I did back then, but I know then there was a couple changes. I mean, that was around one of the features we don't mention around here, master modes. I know there was some changes that happened there, and then
hey man, it's got to be one mention of it.
That's what it is. Someone had to do it, but yeah, no. So I haven't done anything since then. It's busy, and as we were talking before, it takes a lot of work to make quality content around Star Citizen. It likes to fight back, so trying to delve into too many things was just a lot. So I haven't done that in a little bit, but it was fun.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun, man. I couldn't though. I mean, sometimes we play like marbles on stream, and it's fun to commentate that, but that's as far as I'll go. Once the stakes actually matter, I'm like, I don't want to mess something up. Somebody else say that. I enjoy listening to it though, dude. Your Rocket League stuff, I've never really watched Rocket League much, but when I go and I watch you do your thing over there, I'm like, this guy, he knows what he's doing. Like I hear the voice and I'm like, that's like the shoutcaster voice. Like, he knows what he's talking about. I love it.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say I know what I'm talking about, but I can at least make it sound good.
That's 90% of the job, dude.
Right.
Anyways, thank you for joining me, dude. Looking forward to
me.
hearing what you have to say today. Let's head down to Tree, my friend. Good to see you back on the show. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Glad to be here. Good to see Griffin. Missed the time we got to hang out in person at CitizenCon a couple of years ago. But
Yeah.
good and nice to meet Leaf, and have been on. I think I've been on Captain's Table with Voidy before, so good to see all you guys. But yeah, I'm Truria0311, YouTube and Twitch. I co-host and co-produce a small podcast called the Pathfinders Podcast with Nazarus. Like Space Tomato, we follow the development of Star Citizen, Squadron 42, and all that in great detail, but with less production value. I'm a busy dad, so I don't, I'm getting back into the swing of things because life
busy
has normalized
multi-dad.
a little bit. Yeah, multi-dad. Yeah. But I see that I've got a couple of my people in chat, fellow Crayon Eaters, so I'm one of Star Citizen's resident former Marines. So I do, all my content is charity driven. So if I'm streaming or if you watch the podcast later on YouTube, I'm always supporting stackup.org. And so I donate all the monies that I get to stackup.org. So if you want to support a really great organization that focuses on the power of gaming to combat PTSD and all that, please come hang out. Would love to see you. I'm going to be streaming more very soon now that everything has come back around full circle. So I'm looking forward to it.
Good to hear, man. I just realized in this podcast we've got a leaf, a tomato,
A tree.
and a tree. Just need like a bush.
A
Voidy
little
Vid.
garden.
Yeah, I mean we're getting there, right? Voidy Vids, my dude. Good to see you in the stream in the show today. Tell us what kind of nonsense and ship names you come up with and where people can find them.
Yeah, Mr. Tomato, thank you so much for having me on yet another podcast. I always enjoy these type of things. I always say if anybody wants to talk to me about Star Citizen, I'm happy to do so. I could talk about this game forever, just like most of you probably can say the same. Yep, YouTube, Voidyvids on YouTube. That's me. I make cringy gameplay content that just, you know, I don't know, it's silly, but people seem to enjoy it. I don't question their taste in online entertainment, but it is what it is.
It's only cringy if you're a loser, dude. It's only the coolest people watch those videos from what I hear. I say that because I watch them, so.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today and blessing these wonderful, fine people in chat, and also watching afterwards if you'd like to, with your wonderful opinions. We're gonna take daggers and knives to Alpha 4.1.1 today and talk about some of the details of this upcoming patch. Because as Star Citizen veterans, Leaf, I know you said you're somewhat of a newcomer, but I think 5 years is a pretty good. I think you know what's up, what's
5
going
years with
on.
a lot of research, so I
Yeah.
maybe
So,
some gaps here and there, but yeah, they filled in.
As folks who have been around, you guys are very used to the whole four updates, one every quarter, kinda, and how they would do their point patches in between those that would generally bring in the bug fixes and the hot patches and all the stuff that was more stability focused and kind of small form. This year's clearly a lot different, and we've seen it kind of progressing throughout the months with 4.0.1 and then 4.0.2. Both, I think, gave people a different idea of how those updates would work. Then we got 4.1, which was nice, good addition, some sandbox stuff. Now we're looking at 4.1.1, and the first thing I want to ask you guys about this, get straight into the discussion, is, does it feel like this is a advancement on what they've already been showing with 4.01, and do you think they're going to keep going with it, or do you think this is kind of like they're not like and again, this is the context of these smaller updates, not talking about like 4.2, 4.3, and 4.4. Do you think these small updates are going to keep hitting this kind of level? We can start with Griffin on this one.
Well, it's funny. CIG has said so many times in the past things they want to do, they would like to do, and sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. And at the beginning of this year, they talked about the change in their cadence. And of course, there was a certain response from the community. Some people felt like, wow, this is good news. There were other people who felt like, okay, now what does this mean? I think that in light of the development with Squadron 42, where so many resources have been placed over there over the last few years, and with them targeting next year for release, that there's a combination of things that might be happening. One of them might be just the fact that more people are being freed up from polish work over to start working within the persistent community, the persistent universe rather. So that might bring more resource. There's also been an increase over the last year with more people being hired. And then it may be just the focus now that this is the time in their timetable that they want to be delivered to the community. The community's been asking for delivery for things that are broken, things that have been not working for many years, as well as even new features, things that they feel will make the game more sustainable. Chris's word of 1.0 saying that it would be something that was commercially viable, that people could come back to and play and feel rewarded. They have to start working on that at some point. And so they can't wait till, 4.5, 8, and then 1. They have to start early. They have to start bringing us toward that. And there seems to be some satisfaction from the players, from what they're getting. Even now, at this point, they're feeling that something has changed, that they can come back to the game and play with some regularity without the disappointments. There's still things that need to be fixed, obviously, but I think that they are committed to that. I think they're committed to making the game, playable. And I think that weighing out giving us a lot of stuff versus giving us a lot of playability is going to be the balance for players. What do they want? And a lot of people felt like, well, if you're putting it all on playability, what happens to features and content? But I think that we've been pretty not impressed, but surprised that they are still delivering content in the midst of trying to make the game more playable and stayable for the player base.
What if you've been hearing people? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to ask, do you want a more lukewarm take? Because I'm kind of in the vibe where I don't feel like anything's changed.
Okay, let's hear it.
I have yet to be able to play Hathor, because it's broken every single time I try. And that was the
Same.
whole marketing thing, like for this patent. That's what they drove everything behind. And I still feel, I do agree, Griffin, that there is a commitment by the devs themselves to fix bugs. I still think there's a disconnect between their marketing, the fact that they still need to make money. I mean, with that many employees, you burn through a lot of money. I think people probably just haven't done the math. It's a lot of money you go through every year, and to stay afloat, you got to get stuff out and get people excited. So they do hype it up. But the problem is, I still can't play the game often. I walked a friend through the other day. He comes back like every year, plays for one day with me, and that's it. And I got him to do the tutorial, which I preempted. Hey, this isn't a real tutorial, but can you just do it without my guidance and see what happens? In the hab, he broke it twice, and we had to restart reboot the game. And then once he got out, he got to the navigation markers to fly up to the spaceport, didn't realize what he was supposed to do, and quantum somewhere else, and failed the mission again. So he had to restart again. And it just, overall, you notice, even as a new player, there's these broken pieces that make it to the point where I don't want to come back and play it. And it makes it still feel like I'm fighting to play it. Is there a lot of content coming out that feels fresh? Yes, I think they've diversified within the gameplay loops that they do have. They've diversified the amount of types of missions that you can do. You especially see it with 411 with like the ambush and patrol and all that. These are new ways to do ship combat, which I think is exciting. But will they work is the question, and am I fighting them still? So it's exciting, but I also am not excited. That's why I want to say lukewarm, because it's like, it's not against it, but I'm still on the fence that it doesn't feel like we've made that progress that it feels like we should, because they have to still push stuff out to make money.
You mentioned...
Can I contradict and say something, Tim, on that? And I agree with what Leaf is saying, because I think what I see happening is exactly what he's saying happened. But then I've seen people who've come in brand new and they haven't run into any of that. I think that's the problem. The instability, or the level of quality varies so dramatically that there are people who come in and have a completely frustrating experience in the door. And then you've got the other people, like a buddy of mine. He told his brother about the game, and he said maybe he wasn't going to tell him. He says, brother's been playing a game like a madman the last 2 months, and he rarely runs into anything. So it's weird. There are people who have those experiences. I agree with you saying, Leaf, that's what I mean. The consistency isn't there. And you know what I mean? It's not like everybody can come to the game and have that grand experience. There are people who, even something as simple as logging in becomes a problem, or the launcher acts goofy for them. And then there are other people who come in and play for 3-4 hours and nothing happens. But in that, again, they need to create that stability so that you don't have that awkward, because sometimes people are like, what are you talking about? I can't get in the game. And there are other people saying, what are you talking about? I've been playing for the last 8 hours.
Yeah.
It's a weird inconsistency that exists in there.
Yeah.
There's
Welcome to statistics.
There is...
Yeah, no, it's true.
There is I think there's a lot to be talked about, going back, Leaf, to what you said about, you can tell that they're adding content, but you're still running into the same problems before. Would you say that there are problems that you are no longer running into, or is it just does it feel like they're fixing anything, or does it feel like it's still mainly just you're getting content?
Yeah, there are, and again, I'll have play sessions that are smooth 3 hours on through, but that feels like such a low. But like, if you say that to anyone that plays any other game, that feels like such a low bar to set, right? Like, you could play for 3 hours. I expect that in a game. Sure, it's alpha, but it's like, if their goal now is, hey, polish, which I knew it would take time. They're not going to say, hey, we're going to polish 2025 in 2 months and it's fixed. Obviously, it's going to take time. And I'm giving them like a year to do that before I really get critical. But I still think we need to kind of step back sometimes and say, okay, is being able to play for 3 hours with no problems really a thing that we should be praising and celebrating? Because I'm still walking those 3 hours with a thing at the back of my head. I'm tiptoeing around, and I also know, as an experienced player now, that I'm avoiding a lot of bugs because I know what to avoid. I know the things I shouldn't do to make sure those bugs don't get triggered. Whereas new players aren't going to know that. Again, back to my friend who ate the burrito immediately before his mission marker said to do that. So then when it came to eat the burrito, he couldn't eat the burrito. Like those are small things that we avoid that others can't. So I think it's just, there are things that are fixed. Definitely there's, but I still have inventory issues. I still have missions that just don't work that they're promoting me to go and do. So it's like, some things feel fixed sometimes, but then I'll be reminded that they aren't, because they'll break, sure, less frequently, but they'll still break.
Yeah, they started this year with a lot of problems, and just because they've fixed some of them, it doesn't mean those other ones still aren't a pain. Quantum travel right now is like just drives me nuts. So back to 4.1.1 and the caliber of it and what it's bringing to the game. Tree, I want to continue the question with you. Do you feel like this update is continuing a trend of additions that are sustainable, even with a small update like this, looking like what normally would have been like a quarterly update back in the day?
I think this whole conversation is very much going to circle around back to managing expectations. If we can't look at 4.1.1 and think that, okay, we're going to have every patch have this much content. No, it's Invictus launch week. They're hyping everything up. They're doing a whole bunch of content, additions, and they're going to have a free flag. We know how this works. But and I'm a statistics guy. It's my background. I do research is my background, and so it's looking like there's been a lot of people that have been tracking how many bug fixes have been in the all the different point patches and patches this year. The different data points that we can track, and there is a vector change, but like Leaf said, we can't expect it's going to be instantly playable in the first 4 months of the year. No, but things are getting more playable incrementally, which is a really good thing, because that's like you said, for new people, that's a big deal. I don't think we're going to see 60 new missions per point patch for each. That's not going to be sustainable. But I do think that if you look at it over time, how many point patches we get, how many new missions, and how much content we get, we're like, okay, I think that, over the first, we're looking at 4 or 5, basically almost first half of this year. I think that's something that is going to be sustainable over the course of the year, if not be able to build on that. I think that's really great. I just, I hope that they do have in mind that not everybody is a combat player. Not everybody wants to fly ships. Like Naz and I were talking about this a couple weeks ago on the podcast. We did our content wish list, and there are so many people, and Spaceman, I know you've talked about this, that want to do non-combat gameplay, that want to do your solo new player type gameplay. And they really, I hope that they're going to cater more to that this year with the missions that they're creating, in order to create content that allows people to drop in with their starter ship and go and do stuff that isn't, catered around, oh, you have a great fighter, or you and your friends have a multi-crew ship, and it's there's a lot of opportunity for that, and I hope that they will come around to that. I hope we're not getting the wrong perception, being that this is the Invictus launch week and it's going to be a combat focused point patch. I hope that the CIG recognizes that there's a lot more to the game, even with the features that we have, that they can add to it that will cater to a lot more play styles and things that people are looking for content wise.
We're really hurting for investigation contracts.
Oh yeah. Well, and there's they talked about there's missions that they completely dropped with the new mission refactor that they haven't gotten back in, and that they're going to rebuild for the mission refactor. And so that's what I'm hoping for. The investigations, those were, when they worked, those were some of my favorite gameplay, to go find a derelict in space. Or
I'm talking about the new ones they showed us at CitizenCon a few years ago. We still haven't seen.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like that's something they can do with the feature set that we have available, or that is coming this year.
Yeah.
And so but that the expanding on the repair missions. We're just getting those, and they need to, that will expand more with engineering, but okay, when? But we heard about mining missions like 2 years ago. Where are the mining missions? If we have all these fetch quests now, why don't we have fetch quests that aren't Wicklow, where you go do hand mining, you go do the geo mining for this organization, and then you drop off the stuff and you get, credits and/or RP, and that's your solo player. You're first starting out. You've got hand tools. That's good content, I think, for a lot of people that don't want to go fly spaceships and dogfight.
So that's a good angle. Do you think that they are choosing to limit that continuously to make sure people are going and using these specific additions they've made, rather than taking the chance to do what you're saying and just like give people more options to go find stuff and get paid for it?
See it, I don't know. I hate to speculate because obviously, they do want to test the whole Wicklow and the script thing, and get people to go do that. But
Yes.
I feel like there's missed opportunity there to expand on what they have just with rep and money, to touch on the content that people already do. People mine and salvage like crazy.
Right.
And they all they're doing it for is just the UEC, and it's really, most of it's ship based. And I feel like they can really expand on that to include FPS versions of that content with missions, with contracts, because we have missions and contracts for combat and hauling. Well, where are the other ones? And why not? Can they get that done this year? I don't see a feature that's missing that prevents that. If we're looking at content this year and they're creating missions, I feel like that's something that's within their grasp this year that is low-hanging fruit, but
and important.
Yeah.
It's very important.
That is my zero to hero content. For my zero to hero gameplay streams, that's what I want to do. That and we are so lacking in that department, and I feel like that's a subset of the community that has been just dying for that for ages.
Voidy Vids, how about you? 4.1.1. Does it feel like it sets expectations high for future updates of this small caliber? Do you think they can keep this kind of momentum up? I've got you muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
No problem. Yeah, you're good.
Apologies, man. I agree a lot with what Tree's been saying. Is it sustainable? Probably. I think, if that's where they're assigning resources and this is the type of thing that they want to accomplish throughout this year, I think, they'll meet those deadlines. How well they meet them, it's CIG, right? It's Star Citizen.
Right.
We've been sitting with this Hathor thing. Don't get me wrong. I've enjoyed the ever-living hell out of the last couple of patches of Star Citizen since, Pyro hit, and it was like, cool, everybody's excited, you can go to Pyro, you can do this, you can do that. It's great. Then it tapers off, it dies down. Everybody's waiting for the next new hotness. That patch drops. It was 4.0.1, did some fixes. They took some stuff away, they put some stuff back in. I believe that was, from my perspective, from a piracy perspective, there was, exciting. There's always something exciting to do. A pirate's life is never too boring. But then there was the Dedatrine stuff, and that was awesome. It was insane. I loved every like I said, the seasonal content, right? Now we're in this Hathor season, and that was also, you log in, instant Battlefield, Star Citizen, space fun. It's been incredible. I've had a lot of fun. 4.1.1, I'm kind of struggling to see what the hotness is, and I understand that this is the year of polish and the year of this and the year of that, but as Defex was saying, it's anecdote Citizen. Where's the consistency, right? If 50% of your player base, 75% of your player base are struggling or unable to play or having a completely different experience to the rest of your player base, what's happening? Why is that not being fixed, right? And it's just it's a weird sort of set of circumstances, and I'm interested to see how things go. I don't care that we're not getting like a massive feature drop, because historically what actually happened is there'd be a big new feature in a patch, and everything would break anyway, and then you have to wait for another patch, and then it would get fixed. But in terms of the playability and the stuff that you guys have been talking about, for your standard stars, I see something ended there. Are we still good?
Yeah, you're good. Sorry.
Oh yeah, he's just flipping
Cool. Sorry.
our program.
Sorry. Where was I? Completely lost my train of thought. If for players who are veterans, quote unquote, the game's probably more playable for them than it's ever been. And I've had very little issues, and again, it's anecdotal. But for as Leafex said, new players coming into this thing, good luck, man. It's like you're not in for a great time. There's still a lot of friction. There's still a lot of problems. And I think,
Oh boy, the friction.
Yeah, you can look back. December this year, look back, and see where are we now, how much progress has been made from a playability standpoint. I think that's sort of fair or whatever. But again, I rest very firmly in the camp. I don't pass too much judgment until Squadron 42 is out and in our hands, right? Then I will be way more critical of Star Citizen. But again,
Okay.
we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
You had said there that you don't really. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say is this year is sort of a preview for how much content they can generate for the PU. I mean, obviously we're still limited by certain 1.0 features not being in here, but the team is 1,100 people, and it's going to grow some more over the next few years. But this is sort of a preview, of a to look at. They're figuring out their content pipeline post 1.0 when the features are in, and it is more of a content-driven development. There is, because once the 1.0 features are in, there's still going to be new features coming in, but not at the pace that they've been trying to deliver them. And I say trying to deliver them over, during the development. But this is going to be sort of a measure of, about the amount of content they can get in over a given period of time, and then some. As the pipeline gets polished and the team continues to grow. This is sort of like the low end of the ballpark expectation for what content delivery should look like. But it will be more varied and more polished by then. But
Yeah, I think
that's sort of where I'm setting my expectation.
I think you make a good point there, really, in that the game itself, like the stuff they're adding is good, but it is still. Saying low effort it sounds negative. I don't want that to come off as like, oh, they're lazy, they're just pumping stuff out. But like the location we got took advantage of the fact that it had existent assets with what's it called? Theaters of War. Theaters of War.
Yeah.
The missions that we're seeing, as somebody pointed out, is
Theaters of Abandonware?
60 plus missions. But it's 60 plus missions coming from 4 archetypes. And like, while I think that's fine because we do need a lot of missions per archetype so people can just run through them, it still is easier content than, say, putting together a huge narrative storyline and stuff, which they are doing. And to be fair, I just do think that they are still doing what you're saying, which is kind of, this is still the minimum run of content. It's not their all cylinders running on Star Citizen. They're still doing a ton of squadron stuff and even spreading themselves thin across the mission team. So I do think that in terms of quality, it will go up. In terms of quantity, I don't know, for a patch the size of this. But I did ask Void how he felt the patch was overall as a big patch. I would like to continue that and ask you guys all now to go back around and just say how you feel about this patch overall. Is it as, like, there are YouTube thumbnails constantly talking about like so much content. 4.1.1 is blowing up, like it's so good. And I think some people see this and then they jump in and they're like, yeah, there's some new stuff, but the game still plays mostly the same. Do you think people are actually going to get that feeling when they enter this patch? Like, oh my God, this is so much content. This is such a big drop. Or do you think it's just going to be kind of a flash and then mostly people care about Invictus, and then after Invictus is over, we're all just like, okay, where's 4.1.2? I'll give you, Voidy, I'll give you another chance to answer that because I just added on to the question, and then we'll go back around the reverse order with you, Tree.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it's like the flash occurs and then people taper off. I think it's going to be the same thing, right? I will say that things have remained sustainable, but it's so hard to say because we don't actually have like, player numbers. There's no like Steam charts for Star Citizen. It's purely like from our perspective and what me and the org get up to. Things have remained consistently busy, right? And I think that's again a pretty cool thing about piracy in Star Citizen is that you're at the mercy of the health of the player base, right? If there's no players to pirate, you have no gameplay, right? Not that I understand Star Citizen is not so strict, and it's like you're not a pirate. You can be whatever you want to be and do whatever you want to do. And it's from my perspective, it feels like the game's sustained a healthier player base, right? And from 4.1.1, what's exciting and what's cool about that is that you've got some interesting balance changes, some interesting things that affect our gameplay quite dramatically, component changes. I'm not too I don't care too much about the missions and stuff like that. I hope they're good. I hope they're it sounds like they're getting a little bit more complicated with the these ambush things and patrol this and patrol that type of stuff. That sounds cool. But I'm only going to start raising my eyebrows when we start seeing like more systemic stuff or more dynamic stuff or more stuff leading to the 1.0 world, right? Until then, I'm just happy that this foundation that we've got gets the fixes, gets some polish, and becomes more playable, month by month, right? That's where I sort of sit.
Okay, I feel you there.
I hope that answered the question, man. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
waffling.
No, that hit on it. I mean, really, I'm asking about 4.1.1, but it's hard not to answer this with all the other context in here because it is moving really fast this year. I think you hit it. Tree, how about yourself?
I'm not a dogfighter, and so the missions, I will definitely play them just to see the vector changing experience from those the original sort of combat missions that we had, and now what we're getting in terms of production quality. I'm a see how the soup is made kind of guy. I think and if that's your kind of gameplay, I think that this is going to be a good patch for you, especially because it's not just I'm going to go do these missions and I'm going to get UEC. I think the biggest thing for me is seeing the addition of the script stuff and all the Wicklow things. I love seeing that we have the opportunity to play the game for not just getting UEC, and reputation still has a long ways to go. It's going to be more impactful, but being able to collect the script and do things to turn in for Wicklow where you're not just going and I'm going to earn this money so I can buy this component, earn this money so I can buy this ship. It's not just UEC driven, and I think that's a great vector change for the game. I don't want to get my hopes up too high, but I hope I honestly believe that they're doing this for combat first. And they're going, if they expand that into the non-combat mission types, I think that this year can be an even bigger vector change than we might have expected. We always measured it based off of the features that came in, but now if you have more reasons to play the game other than just doing UEC, collecting UEC, regardless of your play style or your sort of profession you lean towards, I think that's the biggest thing. Change-wise, that will be impactful. Even if the content is mid in terms of production value, if you're doing that content for a different reason than we've been doing it for years, that's a huge refresh. I mean, how many times have we watched Salty Mike talk about this exact thing over and over and over again? And if we are finally getting a reason to play the game that isn't UEC, like Salty Mike has been pining for ages, I think that's pretty incredible, and that's what I'm hopeful for. And so I'm excited about 4.1 because I think it's a signal of that, even if it's not my gameplay style. I think it's a signal of what can we expect for the rest of the year if they're generating content that gives you more reasons to play the game.
Yeah. Parallel progression for players is a really, really cool thing. It's been locked behind so many things. Persistence, not tracking stuff across patches, assets that they didn't even really make so you could earn in game. And of course the fact that there was just no other, there was like nothing to do besides earn money. And yeah, the scripts are really cool because I don't know what they're going to do with reputation, but I feel like now we have a sort of like reputation pool that we can spend money in, and the scripts are the only money you can spend, and that gives them just so much power to like limit stuffs based on certain factions and things like that. I love the idea of that, and I love that it touches on something that was such a problem for people in 4.1, which was just that they felt like they could not enjoy the new edition because the new edition felt like it was so focused on groups. And this completely, well, not completely, but this eliminates that to some extent. And I think that's important. I haven't really seen it be much of a discussion point, but I know a lot of people were unhappy about 4.1, feeling like it was locking them out of the fun stuff. And I hope that this can help remedy that for people a little bit. That's kind of a sleeper big addition of this patch. You're right.
Sorry,
Yeah,
can
having
I-
it
can I
being
be
tied
rude
to
and
just the generic
No, no,
missions
carry on.
rather than the world content. Sorry.
Go ahead, Voidy.
Oh, can I go? Sorry.
Yeah.
With the you know, I think it's momentous that they, you know, have finally got around to adding some form of progression that wasn't just related to UEC, right? But like I got to say that like the wind, you know, I'll play the content because it's fun. You know, going to Hathor is fun. Doing the PvP there is fun. But the actual desire to progress and earn my own, you know, stash of those resources, Karanite or whatever, completely taken out of my sales, man, by the fact that they made the rewards sort of like random, right? It's like you can't target the individual pieces that you want.
Yeah.
I cannot explain to you how disappointed I am that is how they designed this content. Like it is shocking, and I feel like more people should be absolutely up in arms about it. It's insane.
They feel RNG.
Yeah, no, dude.
But do you
it's-
feel
that's
like
not on?
so that's what I think the scripts kind of help with, because
Yeah,
now instead of having to take some certain quest and then getting some predetermined reward, you can just get scripts and then go to that quest giver's shop and be like, okay, I want this for the work I did. You think
Well,
long term that'll
making
help?
it so you can loot them. They don't just magically appear somewhere. You have to get out of your ship and go pick it up off a body, you know, and like,
yeah.
you know, I think
Love that. I love the idea of a physicalized currency. Absolutely adore this concept, right? So cool. But then the turn-in is like, I don't know if you guys seen other, you know, streamers do their Polarises or you know, go and like do these big turn-ins, the big cash, you know, payout money thing that you're going to go and do now. And it's just, you know, the cargo elevators are eating all their Karanite and
Well,
you know,
yeah.
it's just, it takes them like 3 hours to like get it, you know, get the job done. Dude, oh man, they've got some fixes to do, man. It's brutal.
Yeah. I mean,
We have
and
a
that's
saying in the military called "good initiative, bad judgment." It was a good initiative. The execution wasn't perfect, but I think it's a step, and it's a good
There
step.
you
But
go.
yeah, they got a little bit farther to go.
we got a saying in Star Citizen. It's called painful execution, bad judgment. And it comes up every once in a while. I can't pull one off the top of my head, but I feel like there's so many times when we just all feel like we've collectively gotten shot in the foot, and we're like, we probably could have avoided this one. Yeah, maybe. Leaf,
Yeah.
let me hear what you have to say about 411 and like the significance of it overall. Do you feel like it is the hype real? Are the people going to see all these statements about 411 and then come back in and be satisfied or more perturbed?
Yeah, I think the other two so far have hit a lot of the key points with that. You know, I Tree was mentioning, you know, it's exciting with StarScript. I think that's one of the biggest things right now that's allowing them. They will always continue to be able to push though, as long as they develop more in-house tools to make things smoother. We're always going to be able to have content. The problem is right now that it's content around the same thing time. Again, I'm also not particularly into a lot of the combat. I like the combat when it happens here and there. Every once in a while, it's fun. Like I keep a gun on me at all times because you never know when I'm doing cargo missions. The other day someone jumped me at an outpost to put another player, and I had a weapon, so I was able to turn it around and take them down. That's fun. That's exciting. That's story. But right now the big issue is a lot of as humans, we like stories and we need conflict for those stories. And right now, a lot of that conflict revolves around combat. And that conflict is purely driven by the mission itself. So right now, if I want to engage in conflict, I have to go into my mobiGlass, find a mission that is built around a very specific conflict of probably combat. Obviously, there's cargo and mining and that. But right now, we don't have enough variety of conflict. The only major changes you're going to see is when they get in crafting, when they get in base building. These will have their own story building conflict moments where my goals are not just to make money. That was another point that was brought up, is my goals is to build this base. My goals is to craft this specific component to sell it to someone, or to get script, or to just have it for my own ship. And then all of a sudden I don't have enough materials to craft this. That's my conflict. That's my story. Now I got to go out and collect these materials. And in that moment, I walked along, I tripped and fell, or I was running too much, or didn't have the right suit, and I had a heart attack. That's my conflict. That's my story driver. It doesn't have to revolve around getting in a gunfight or ship combat with NPCs or other players. And right now, basically what I'm saying is we don't have enough variety of story inducing conflict outside of combat itself. And until we get those other gameplay loops, all of these patches are going to feel like, yes, lots of content, but it's not those paradigm shifting levels of content. And I do like that they have the tools to do this. Once we get those other loops in, they'll be able to pump out a lot of content for those, but we need those groupings of conflict and storytelling as well.
Yeah, I mean, now that we don't really know what's going on with Star Sim, I would say base building and crafting feel like the most promising things to help get that kind of going too. The flow of materials and the value of resources doesn't really exist in this game.
Yeah, you have to give as many varieties of goals as possible. And if there is base building very specifically, I'm sure everyone realizes this, but that inherently gives the player a personal attachment to something in the game. Sure, we have freight elevators right now, but like those break all the time, and it's a small space. You don't get to show this friends. You can't really have friends come over and be like, hey, look at the setup I have in my home. You know, base building gives you that personal investment to come back to. So many games are built around this. Like you look at games like Rust, Minecraft, all this. The point of it is to create something personal that's yours, that you own. Base building is a very key thing that will absolutely keep me driving. And then I'll be more incentivized to go and do an ambush mission because I know I'm going to get script or a material at the end of it to build my base, right? Like you need to have those goals that you can come back to, not goals that you go in and then figure out what your goal is. Okay, which mission today am I doing on my mobiGlass? No, I already know what mission I'm doing because I already have a personal goal.
Yeah, Hathor locations are the first time I've actually felt like that was a thing in game for me too. It's like, I haven't run through Hathor either. It's been broken every single time I find it. But nowhere else in the game have I ever had so much fun just treating it as a sandbox environment where I'm just exploring and finding things and admittedly engaging in a lot of combat, because that is, like you said, that's still a lot of the primary way of doing it. But I go there, I loot, sometimes I meet different players, sometimes they work with me, sometimes they don't. Sometimes there are different ships in the area I have to avoid. There's different kinds of loot at times. PvE goes on in different locations, and I just, like, it's the first time I've ever gotten into the game and been like, I'm just going to head here and see what happens today, because I know something will be happening. Mm-hmm. And I do appreciate that, but I hear you. We need a lot more of that kind of thing, and definitely outside of combat.
Yeah.
So with what Leafx has been saying, I like this is what drives me in Star Citizen, right? It's like this emergent gameplay generator potential that this insane game has going for it, right? And that's why I gravitate so strongly towards piracy. Even though you're saying from an anti-combat perspective, I think from a combat perspective, piracy is the thing that just it's the gift that keeps on giving in terms of that emergent gameplay. But that's how, I feel like they've got such a good foundation for this to start taking place, but nothing's connected or systemic enough, right? And I always like to look at like, a Skyrim or a, what are these games with like some kind of, light management or simulation taking place, where it's like, you'll have a goal in Skyrim and you'll travel down the path and then you'll see a fox and you'll walk over there and then a troll's fighting a dragon and you broke your sword, now you must go and do this. And you've had these series of events that have now, in Star Citizen, it could be like, I ran out of fuel and now I need to do this, and the trajectory of your intended gameplay has changed.
But I'll still see a dragon in Star Citizen.
Yeah. Space dragons win, TM.
Yeah, dude.
And I think
Friggin'
that's such an important component for me that I hope that they manage to get right. And it's one of those things that I've always believed that they're consistently laying a good foundation for it. But then how do you go and guarantee these things happen, right? Because I think when that happens to a player, certain games, certain titles become so special in the collective consciousness of gamers when they can all have that sort of experience, right? That's kind of guaranteed to happen in certain games, and then you're you have that clicking aha moment, right? And I think hopefully in the future, when these systems become get into place, it becomes more apparent for the average player to to log into the game and have these moments, and then that's when I think Star Citizen just it takes off, right? It enters that mainstream consciousness and becomes something special.
I appreciate that. Griffin, what are your thoughts on the patch and really how it might be taken from players given the hype surrounding what is traditionally a smaller patch, and it's coming in now with just a lot of people feeling like it's doing a lot of good?
Yeah. I don't know. It's like, in retrospect, historically, it's like whenever CIG talks about a patch or something, it seems like I don't know. I don't want to blame us content creators, but we're the first ones to say there's nothing in this patch. And then over a period of time, stuff starts coming out. Then the wave starts to swing back that, this is the greatest patch. And I know CIG has also marketed this patch as having a lot of content. But I think a lot of the making a patch sounds underwhelming starts out with the community first, because they're looking for things. And when that patch comes out, or when the patch notes come out for the next thing, and they don't see those things, there's a bit of frustration on their part. So they say, well, there's nothing here, or there's not a lot there. To me, I don't know, maybe my context is I look at Star Citizen, whether it's in the PTU or whether it's live, as nothing but testing. I don't come to Star Citizen looking for a working experience. If it happens, it happens. But when I come to the game, I don't know if there should be an expectation of things working all the time. And so when these patches come out, I think people look for patches to say that, something's going to be working or it's going to be better. And it should. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be. But I don't know. I struggle a little bit when people come to Star Citizen and maybe that's because we think that because there's a PTU, well, that's where it's supposed to be buggy, but when it's live, it should be working. And I don't ever see this game that way. I always see it as it's always a work in progress, and you want it to be as working as much as possible. That I would agree with. But the idea that things should be operating because they're live, I don't know. I don't know if that's a good place to be in your head if you're going to try and do a game that's in development like this. I do want to go back to something that Tree said earlier, which was about the community and what we're looking for. I've had this conversation with my folks in Soul Citizens before, with talking about why is combat so heavy? Why does the game seem to be so heavy when CIG has talked about all these quote unquote wonderful things we should be able to do in the universe? And I think a lot of it has to do much more with business and money than it has to do with anything else. I don't think we would raise $800 million if this game was about archaeology, But ironically enough, exploration was the #1 voted thing that people in the community wanted. Yet, not one exploration ship in this game does exploration. None of them do. And I've got a fleet of them. They're all great cargo ships. And so there are people on the PvP side who say that they're not getting things, they don't have things. But God, I can tell you, as exploration people don't have squat. I don't even have a freaking artifact to dig out of the ground after all these years. So I think that from a business standpoint, and if you look at just the industry in general, what generates money is conflict. And It's understandable for me for business. I'm willing to wait on some of those game features. Would this game make $800 million if it was about farming? No, it wouldn't. They've picked the area where they're able to generate revenue and generate interest. But after waiting many, many years, over a decade, I think it is important, like Tree said, that there are enough things there right now that those of us who are doing mining, the TDD, I've been looking at that globe spin for freaking 12 years. I want the TDD to be meaningful at some point for me. I don't want just the gun shops to be meaningful. I want the hospital to be meaningful. There are these other career areas that I would like to see tier 0, tier 0, tier 1 of things to introduce. And I know that they're moving toward that. But those other areas that are fleshed out, like mining and salvage, I think could be much more both organic in the sense of encounters that happen when you step out into the world, as well as if somebody wants to punch that Moby glass or go to the TDD and find something that they can go do. And then I think Leaf's point about base building and things of that nature, I think absolutely. I think that story-driven things are going to be important as those get introduced. And I think that when people have things to do that go beyond just the satisfaction of making credits, but accomplishing things in the game, and maybe their personal goals, just as much as they may be org goals or group goals, I think all of that's going to make a difference. So for me, that I think that it's a patch. That's what I look at it as. I don't look at it as, am I looking for a patch that's fixing things? Am I looking for a patch that's introducing things? Am I looking at patches that are extending things to the next tier? Everybody has their different view of what they're coming to a patch looking for.
Good take. Honestly, I think you said something really key towards the beginning there about expectations, partially because of creators, partially because of Reddit, partially because of Spectrum, leaks, Discord, because we're crazy and we like news.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you guys, this one might be a little self-reflection. I know it is for me, but are we excited about the wrong things in Star Citizen? Have we grown too used to being excited about the news or what's coming to the point where we'll look at like patch notes or leaks or things that talk about an update that's coming out, and then it comes out and it never meets expectation? Not because it's a bad release. I'm not saying it's a bad release. I'm also not saying it's a good release. I'm just saying taking away the quality of the actual content that came out. Do you guys think that the Star Citizen community has a little bit of an issue with being just more excited for that news, and then when it comes out, it's kind of like, well, this is in a game which I don't really care to play, so I'm excited about whatever's the next news, and that's kind of why a patch will sometimes fall a little flat, even for people who felt like they were very excited just a few days before. Anybody free to go on this?
I'm gonna kickstart this one. Yeah, I think part of it comes into with a world and sandbox so big, you run into and without all the features of the game in yet, we run into a situation where people fantasize about the experiences. They fantasize about what's coming next, and then the problem with that is that it's very easy for us to lose sight of the reality of where it's supposed to be going and make stuff up in our head. And a lot of times we'll say, oh, this new thing coming in will be great, a great addition and create this cool experience. Then you get in the game and you realize you can't get to that part because something else is broken, and you've forgotten about that, and you started drifting off into this world of this will be cool without remembering where we are right now. So it gets to the cycle where well, I've been burned enough times. Let me just watch the news, and now I'll just I won't play it this patch, but I'll watch it. And that's where you get into that cycle of it being exciting to see the things coming, because we're fantasizing about where it's going to go or what it can be, and sometimes fantasizing about things that will never be and they never were going to be, because we either missed a piece of news, or someone joins in, the last couple of years, don't realize what the point and the goal of the game is, and think it's going another direction than it is supposed to be. So they've got a completely wrong idea about what these features are supposed to drive them towards. So yeah, I think it is a cycle of that. You get to the point where you're excited about where it can be, but we're not there. So I'm just going to be excited for the next news.
The good old potential.
Progress. Yeah.
Classic.
It's the
What stage
an
of your
equation
6 stages is that?
The 6 stages of Star Citizen. I think that's stage 4. I believe.
Stage 4. Okay.
Congrats. Yeah.
I mean,
you
if
made
you-
it pretty far in.
If you have an understanding of what they're working towards, especially in relation to the type of gameplay that you're really interested in, I think it's easy, but it's also reasonable to get excited about incremental little changes that are part of that equation to get to that eventual goal of what you want. And so like that's why the script thing is a big deal to me. And I just find it really ironic because like 150 years ago, this is a terrible thing where we had company towns and you had company currency, and now we're bringing that back in a video game, and that's what we want.
Yeah.
We want, the children yearn for the mines.
Lock me in, baby.
Yeah, but like to me, that's a small vector change on the road towards something that the ultimate experience that I want. Another change they just made in the patch notes. You can, even though quantum still has a lot of issues, like you can quantum to an unoccupied but owned ship, and they launched the Polaris without that, and I played with the Polaris for a couple of days until and was essentially working my way around to that way I could leave from my Polaris hangar and go do the stuff and bring back my loot and collect it up my Polaris. And then one time I can't find my way back to my Polaris and it's essentially gone and I have to claim it and everything that I've collected is gone. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing that ever again.
Yeah.
But now that's in. And that's like, it's a small change that, is just in the patch notes and you otherwise wouldn't know about it, but that's a huge vector change, and even though the sum of all the things that I want to get to the experience that I ultimately am pining for is 100, each one of these things is part of that equation that get there. And so, I'm happy for those, and if there was zero progress towards that, then I would be upset. But there's a lot of little things that come in that ultimately add up to, okay, well now 4.1 has moved that number to 45, whereas before it was 38, and so I think that's perfectly reasonable, but I think it's entirely subjective person to person, because if the patch doesn't include anything that is relevant to you getting to that ultimate number of equivalent things that make up that experience, then yeah, it's a bad patch for you. And some patches are going to be better, some patches are going to be worse, and so it's going to be, up to the individual. But it's, and I forgot where I was going with that. But I think that with the amount of fixes coming this year, and that have already come this year, I think for a lot of people, that's a lot of small vector changes that make a difference. That where when things were broken or they're half implemented, they didn't increase that sum that they were looking for. Whereas now they're like, oh, okay, well, this is getting more a more fully fledged implementation. This is working more reliably. My number go up. Lizard brain happy or happier.
Do like the numbers. We like big numbers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you for that take. Voidy, did
Can I
you
jump in and say something? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Oh,
Griffin,
no.
please.
I want to hear Voidy stuff so I don't repeat things. Go ahead, Voidy.
Spaced Water, can you repeat the question and then Griffin can carry on?
What was the question? Oh,
Yeah, what was the question?
you
I was
basically-
so, yeah.
no, go ahead. What were you saying?
I was intrigued by Tree's
Yeah, so was I. I
things
was
there,
distracted.
I completely.
Got my head.
Honestly, this feels like Star Citizen development right now. It's like, where are we going?
Yeah. Where are we
What was
going?
going
What's
on
happening?
again? Yeah, I forgot. Sorry, I lost
I
long-term
can make mine
persistence.
quick. I can make mine quick. It was based upon what you asked, Leaf, and it was about the fact that how we as the community are when these things come out. I think that there's this. We did a show once called Vision, Dreams, and Reality, and I think that visions is Chris saying, "I want to." Dreams is this is what we're going to do, and then reality is this is what we're doing. And I think that those three things are an issue. I agree that there's this. Players have in their own minds what they would like to see because they see the potential of the game. Sometimes we were talking about this last week. We did a show, and we were talking about how even the visuals of this game make you dream. It doesn't even have to be. You step into the world and you see all this stuff, and you see certain increments of them doing things technically, and then in your brain somewhere you say, man, imagine if, or this would be great if they do this, or I can see this and I would love to do this. And sometimes those build into expectations subconsciously, and you see so much that can happen in here. And when the delivery doesn't meet that, whether consciously or subconsciously, it does have an effect on us as players. Some of those things will never happen. Some of them will happen over time. A tier 0 entry of something comes in and people feel disappointed, only to not knowing that tier 6 will be actually the fruition of that dream for some of the players. But I think that but then there's so much uncertainty, because they will CIG deliver those things. They could have good intention to deliver certain things, but if there's technical limitations or some other limitation that comes up in the game, we may not see things. I played Eve for 7.5 years when it first opened up. There was so much stuff that was broken in Eve all the time. And now when I look at their things that they're doing, it's like, wow, look at that. But they're freaking 20 years in now, and they're finally delivering some really cool stuff. And so I don't know, I'm not trying to project that for CIG. I'm just saying that playing that game for 7 years, I think I was playing like from year 3 to year 10 or 12, like year 12. And I mean, there was just stuff that they had said from the very beginning they wanted to put into that game that did not exist when I left that game. And I was frustrated by it because I was drawn by all those other things. I wanted to do some of the aspects of that game. And no matter what I did, I had to be shooting. No matter what I did. If I was going to go ice mining, I had to go shoot. If I wanted to go look at a black hole, I had to shoot. And after a certain point, I was like, well, what happened to those other 7 things that you said I could do in this game? Is everything I'm going to do have to be that I got to be looking over my shoulder every freaking minute of the game? And it burned me out after a while. And I know that there's some people in this game that are feeling that way. They're saying, how come everything that comes out has to be, there has to be, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about the risk factor. I'm talking about, it just seems like there's always an element that always is built in that we're going to have to, not possibly, or maybe you won't. I know they've done a few things that have given some flexibility to people, but that's usually in relation to cargo delivery or freight. So I think people dream still about this game. Even with patch notes in front of them, they dream. And those dreams, whether consciously or subconsciously, make us feel a certain kind of way about patches, about delivery, and all that other stuff. And I'm not saying it's not justified. I just think it's just part of what we do as gamers.
I think it's that we all...
Dreams are what wishes believe in.
Yeah.
Remember that shirt in game?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Leaf.
I think we see this game, at least in my opinion, not as a space game, but more so a world to exist in. Like, obviously, the space is a big part of it, but the goal at the end, I think, from it, unless I've been misled or we've misled ourselves, is that we will have a world that everyone is partaking in different activities that interact with each other in a systemic way. Some are combat, some are not combat, etc., etc. And we see that world and we want to exist in that world, but the problem is we can't yet because of first off, there's so many pieces of it missing, but secondly, it's just that persistence of it. It doesn't feel like I am working towards anything. I know also, maybe at the back of my mind, before 1.0, there's going to be that final wipe. There's going to be that time where everything I've just done is gone. So I'm always semi-detached from it. And regardless of there being base building or crafting or whatever, even with that, there'll be that at the back of my head. So I think we see this large world we want to exist in, but we can't have that yet, and we won't be able to have that until the game is released. So there's always going to feel like this piece missing, at least for me, that I'm just going to be casually watching. I am not going to play this game every single day. I admire everyone that does, or Space Tomato that has to, because of your content, but
man, I don't play it that much. Mostly just watching.
But it is a lot, right? And it does feel like I can't get what I want from this game because it can't give it to me yet, but I want it to, so I follow the development. To bring it full circle back to the why do we, do we just follow the news, is because of that. We can't have where it will be what we want yet.
That's good.
I think going back to what was being said about the combat inclusion, And this it kind of touches on what you said, Leaf. They are still suffering from the fact that combat's just the easiest thing to develop. Partially because Star Citizen kind of started on it. Ship combat was like really the only thing you could do for a lot of the first years of this game. But also because Squadron 42 is so focused on it. So the amount of time they've spent probably trying to like figure out weapons and ship defenses and shields and all that stuff is going to be so vastly greater than the time they've spent figuring out how the breakdown of how this mineral refines into its good ore, you know? And I think we're still suffering from that in this game because they know I by no means believe that they want this to be a combat game. Okay, Star Citizen wants money. CIG wants money, Mr. Krabs style. Okay, they're not gonna drive people away from the game if they want to do things that aren't combat. Obviously, we always are gonna have this inherent risk in certain areas, but I genuinely think that a high security area, if they do security right in this game, you're not gonna be worried about. You're gonna be more worried about PvE pirates than players. So I don't think that that's where it's headed, but I do think it still is stuck in this easy to market, easy to produce, and it's always kind of existed. So combat is the first direction to go in expanding out these professions, and I do think it hurts the perception of the game for sure. But it's probably what like they can just put out the most easy, right?
Yeah,
I think it harkens. Oh, sorry.
No, you go.
Go for it. I think it harkens back to the original, like who were these original audience of backers, right? You're looking at not a community, but like a gaming industry that lacked any super futuristic, or when I say futuristic, like reality future, like the super games of the future, space game, right? That had some kind of multiplayer component and some kind of simulation component, right? And this has become more and more apparent to me as I've dived into the world of the competitive PvP side of Star Citizen, where you've got who else is using and getting this invested in terms of time and like dedication and all this type of stuff to play a space game competitively. What are your alternatives at the moment, right? There is a huge amount of investment from people who just want this game to be good and fun and meaningful, right? And I think somebody, we said, I think LeafX put it perfectly. It's like, why am I here? Star Citizen, again, I've said this before. It's this incredible foundation. We're playing this game. It's one of the most impressive engines on Earth, right? Like what other engine is doing stuff that Star Citizen is doing right now that you can log into and play, right?
Unreal Engine 5 Voidy, they should just switch.
Yeah. They should just switch. Copy, paste, simple. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there.
Sorry.
It's now. That has to mean something, I guess. It's like there is meaning, there is depth here, right? There are people, we're talking about people like creating their own reasons and becoming dreamers and all this type of stuff, right? They knew their target audience, right? They were smart, right? Chris is a very smart guy. These are desperate space game enthusiasts who have no game, and he's like, listen, man, I've got your everything game in my brain, and I'm gonna make it, right? And here we are. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm absolutely mind-boggled by how there is so little competition in this space.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, realistically, it is near impossible. I mean, so I'm gonna call them out because I think there's a lot of talented people working on this game, but I also do see a lot of mistakes that have been solved by the games industry in the development of this game already, that they continue to stumble on these mistakes. So I think there has been a not the most efficient development. Obviously, you're harkening back to 2017 days and stuff like that too. But it's like even now I see problems in the development. But also, a game of this scale is very difficult to make. When you're trying to make everything systemic, look at other systemic games out there We're gonna do the callback. Everyone does this, but look at games from Rockstar like Red Dead Redemption 2. Look at Grand Theft Autos. These are very systemic games, but they're single player and limited scope in terms
There
of
you
the
go.
playable area, and those still take how many years and how many millions of dollars to make,
Decades.
right?
Decades, bro. I'm with you. Yeah.
It's hard to make a game of this scale, and again, the feature creep was obviously a problem in the development here too. But it is not easy, and this is why you don't see those comparisons. But that's why it also works, because we know if they can accomplish it, nothing will be like it.
If Red Dead Redemption 2 had to be crowd-funded and was transparent development from day zero, people would be calling it a scam.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's the difference. Is this game was public about it from the beginning.
It's an interesting point. I mean, I think it's something that a lot of people go back and forth with. Like, what they're doing is impressive, and they spent a lot of time on it, and it has been fruitful. I know a lot of people will joke about the engine and its in irregularities and its problems. It definitely has problems. Plenty of stuff they still need to fix. We're literally watching them do refactors on key systems. They don't even have full-on multi-threading Vulkan support, I don't believe. So there's still a lot they need to do for it, but it's not a trivial task to create a game engine in especially the current industry. I think 10 years ago, that question was completely different, but the way that the industry is consolidated and the way that money has shrank out of the gaming industry, the fact that they were able to get this built is probably the most valuable thing they will ever do as a company, because I can't predict the future, but it does not look good for the gaming industry in terms of independently controlled game engines. So I do think that's a really big hit for them, but at the same time, you still have these problems. They're the same problems we've been talking about the whole podcast that affect the people who are playing right now. They're not playing that finished version of Star Engine that CIG looks at. They're playing a very simplified and just like still in production version of it. So I guess, I don't know, I always come back to this point of like, you have people who want the game that they're building, you have people who want the current game to play well. And to close this whole thing out, I guess I'd like to ask you guys sort of if you think that they are focusing too much on the game playing well right now, and they've kind of turned their back on at least outwardly, because we can still see they're developing stuff, but in terms of what's being released, features, pushing the game forward, it's not an uncommon topic to talk about this year, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh, 100%. I mean, they even said it, right? They were like, yeah, we'll get the game running well, and then you'll see people ask for features, which has already started happening. It's not even running well yet. Go ahead.
It's the people have taken what was said and taken the telephone version of it from across the community and misconstrued that from what was actually said. There's a whole lot of people that have now set their expectations to no features, and that it would only be about stability and performance and content, and that focus would mean that the game would be stable and playable and full of content. And it's like, no. Look at what they said. We're going to get more playability, and it's going to be, their goal is to have it more playable, more stable, more performant, and introduce more content. But they're not developing features. We're still going to get features. Watch them with the reports, and they'll tell you what features we're pretty much likely going to get. And those will introduce some instability and playability issues when they get added. But they're going to get more development time, and it's just a lot of misconstruing what's been said, and that has led to people setting inappropriate expectations, both in terms of hey, I'm excited that the game's going to be playable now and it's going to run better for me, and it's like, well, no, more playable. They didn't promise that. They didn't guarantee that. You're still going to have issues. Like I still have issues, and I have a absolutely beastly machine. But again, vector changes. It's we're already more playable. It's already more performant. They have been doing a whole lot more fixes. And it's that is a good change. The big question is, are the features that they are currently working on and that are most likely to come? And I don't think of this as just 2025. I think of this as 2025 plus the lead up to 2026, because that they're saying it without saying it. They still need to get the Squadron 42 features into the game, so we're not playing two different versions of the game when Squadron comes out. And I'll say that until the cows come home. We're not going to have Squadron 42 running on Star Citizen 4.5 while the PU is running on Star Citizen 4.2.
I do think.
I don't think.
Sorry, you can finish.
Oh, yeah, it's. But I think that those features are the ones that are well in development, that we're seeing in the monthly reports, that we've seen demonstrated a lot of, that are the most impactful changes to the game and how we play it. That, along with the content and the improved performance and playability over that same period of time, that's gonna make the game a lot better. Great? No. Better? Yes.
I will say this. They did say 2025 year of playability. So in the letter from the chairman, they certainly set the stage for this being a year. And I think everybody also is very aware that the game needs to meet a plateau of playability this year for sure after server meshing. That's what I figured was always their plan. And so I think they're working towards that. I think they're making progress towards that, but it's not happening as fast as we would hope. And I think the fact that we didn't get the mission or transit refactors really hurt this year overall. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I do think that by the end of this year, they're going to have a lot more people excited about the game that they're playing than what Star Citizen could be. Not saying that the majority of people will be excited about that. Most people want the game to be made. But I do think that there's going to be a lot more general excitement in the community about actually playing the game at the end of this year than there was at the end of last year. That's for sure. And I've been doing polls on my YouTube channel every month of community sentiment, and the results are actually kind of surprising. It was not great towards the end of last year, but since then I have 3 different options on there. One of them is happy, one of them is not happy, and then there's one in the middle. Happy and not happy have completely switched. Back in October, it was something like 18% people were unhappy and 8 people were happy, 8% of people. Now it's 22% of people are happy, 9% of people are marking unhappy. And this is a small slice of the community for sure. So, definitely biased.
Stats guy here might have a thing to say about that. Have all the people that were unhappy left and not entering the polls anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that could happen with that kind of data.
Well, yeah.
But I do see a trend. I do see a little bit of a turnaround, and I think in terms of conversation, you can hear it too.
Yeah.
When you do repeated polls and across different. Whether it's YouTube and other social medias and stuff, and you get similar results, and there is a vector change, is it 100%? Are we looking at a massive randomized controlled trial against, No, but it is
not going to publish a journal on it.
It is, yeah, it is good data, and it does have some significance. The fact that it is repeatable, and I think if that was different than what CIG was seeing in their own internal metrics, that they wouldn't be saying that, because they are, but I think it's a good it's a good thing. Sorry, I lost my train of thought again. Problem. But I think it does reflect within a margin of error what CIG is saying in terms of the ways that they can gauge player sentiment, and we're just starting in the beginning of May. And so I think that it's probably going to reinforce and help them see that, hey, this is the right track. We're doing the right thing. We just need to keep doing that, but also do it better. They're obviously looking at what they've done and be like, okay, we can improve this pipeline in this way, we can do more of this, but take the feedback that we've gotten over the first third of this year and incorporate that going into the next 2/3. So I think that's CIG is always looking to improve, and they're always tracking things. And so I think if it's already this good in the first 4 months of the year, I think that we're probably going to see more of the same but better over the next 8.
Yeah, I'm
Unless CIG absolutely trips on themselves.
I'm inclined to agree. And I think some of those big things, if they can fix them, again, transit, quantum travel, mission system, inventory. I think if they could get those 4 things under wraps or under control, along with like the momentum they've been keeping now, the game will be pretty. It'll be good for what we have by the end of the year. We definitely still need that diversity you guys are talking about.
The period leading to IAE could very well have more of that industry focus, because I mean it's Invictus launch week. Of course, we're going to be hyping up combat leading up into and around that. We're not going to be getting new industry focused ships for Invictus launch week, really. But I that's what I'm hopeful for, is that they take what they've learned about combat and the content they're generating, and they apply that to not specifically combat or combat adjacent.
I'm thinking they're gonna try and hype up base building and focus on whatever's leading into that. So like mining and refining, maybe. I hope we see refining. I don't know.
Griffin said earlier something about the ships that help sell the game, right? And I was sitting there thinking, man, if they like gauging the responses of like historic Star Citizens, where they've said stuff like, oh, farming in the Endeavor, and the crowd goes absolutely wild. Man, if they did some kind of like tier negative 800 implementation of farming, I think they would do that. They would break the bank, man. They would fund the game for the next 5 years.
Yeah, and they've talked about it. I'm glad that we've seen video clips of them showing us how vegetation would supposedly grow over time as it's worked on. And I don't know if that's gonna still exist in the way that they showed it to us, but farming is certainly a thing. And we want to farm in the garden. I mean, it's the garden. We got things to sell, medicines and just stuff.
Yeah, it's that crafting sort of ecosystem, right? Everything to do with crafting. When that stuff comes online, man, that's exciting.
And the fact that like, unlike other games, I love farming in a good game. Animal Crossing, shoot, man, I'm all about it. But I'm on a farm in that game. The ability to farm different things in different atmospheres on globes that have different climates around them, like different sunlight, different humidity, different temperature. I don't think they're going to go crazy with it, but they've clearly said, hey, these outposts will spawn in these areas, so they'll be able to grow these things better. And I can only imagine that's going to be the case. So you're obviously going to grow something different on Microtech than you're going to grow on Hurston. So that on its own could be very, very cool for a game like this.
But look at us again, dreaming about the things we don't have.
Imagine. And then when it comes, I'm going to be like, screw farming, dude. I want to do it. All right, to wrap things up here real quick, I want to ask you guys one final quick question. Are they releasing too many ships? We've had more than one vehicle release, or at least one vehicle release every month since last August, and it's been quite hefty. Now, back in like 2018-ish era, I think we were getting around the same amount of ships, but most of them are in concepts. Now, when they come out, they're coming straight to the game. So it is definitely different from before, but it is still adding a lot more assets to the game that some people would say maybe aren't necessary for the time. Do you guys feel like they're adding too much, or is it good for you, and why?
I'll start.
Give it a
I
go.
don't think you can ever have too much variety of advanced science fiction spaceships in an advanced science fiction spaceship game. I think that just it adds, from a casual eye, it adds cool variety and makes the world feel more and more alive. From a practical point of view, it keeps funding the game, which is a good thing, regardless of how you feel about their marketing tactics or the monetization of the project. I can't see a negative with this, right? Keep on pumping out the ships, keep on bringing in that cash and make the game.
All right. Anybody else got something to say about that?
As long as we are seeing that they are working on the ships in the backlog, and that's one thing where, the ISC team, and this is totally just me theory crafting, but I totally think that the reason they're making less content is because they're working on Squadron 42 marketing. That's where the rest of their FTE is going to right now. But I still think that they could do more to highlight the ships that are in development that versus just the ones that are about to release.
They
And so
gotta keep stringing you along. They can't finish those ships. They gotta, you know.
Well, I mean,
They
but
gotta
we know
convince
they're
us.
working on. They just showed off the Pioneer, but we haven't seen their work on the Perseus. We haven't seen their work on.
What happened to the BMM?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not being worked on. But they are working on some, not all, but some. If there was no headway on the backlog, then it would be, hey, why are you releasing so many new ships that are not part of the backlog that we paid for? And so I think that's fine. I also like that there's a lot of new the mix is leaning more toward starter ships and small cruise ships, versus big expensive things. I think that's the market they need to be leaning towards, the more normal gamer people versus people who are willing to spend hundreds on the game, if not more. And you can see that, obviously from the Asgard and other vehicles, that they are doing the kit thing. And it's also, this is great for them training the vehicle content devs, who they are hiring and expanding the team for. So it's good for a number of reasons, both for us and for CIG. And so I think it's fine.
Yeah, I think the training aspect is a big one, and we could see the trend of these more related ships, I guess, to each other, starting, I want to say, with the Raven. I think with the Saber Raven, they released what was the first one, the Firebird, I think, and then from there they did the Peregrine, and then after that we got the Terrapin Medical, and then we saw the Fortune, and now we're seeing the Asgard. So they are doing a lot of these, not quite variants, but sort of like related, based on the same chassis. And from people I've talked to, obviously this is normal in like ship development in the Navy and on ground platforms, but it does obviously come off as they are pumping them out because they need to train people and they need to make money. And honestly, I think most people I've talked to don't have a problem with that, as long as the ships aren't just completely useless or stepping on another ship. But honestly, that's something we won't know until they balance all these ships, right? Further in the process.
Yeah, it was funny, again, back to your video that I think is for supporters only, that 6 stages things you mentioned. One of the reasons people get into it is, oh, cool ship from this fantasy the Star Wars looking one, this Battlestar Galactica looking one, and it's like, that actually wasn't what brought me in. I actually, I'm sorry, controversial, but I don't care about the ships really in the game. There's some I like, I definitely look, but I don't want to know every ship, every hard point, every detail about these things. I think it'd be cool if I have to ask another player that's an expert in that area that knows. I don't want to know everything in this game. I want there to be a need for me to maybe hire out another person to say, hey, I need an engineer for this thing, or hey, I don't really do farming, man. Can you do you do this? I want there to be those specialties because they're skill-based gameplay loops, and I think knowledge of all the ships is one of them. So I know all the ships coming out. It's just the fact of someone that's following the news, but I don't dive deep into them. But I am excited that there's lots of them, and that it's to the point where I can't really learn all of them and everything else in the game, because I think it was Voidy that said the variety opens up that world to feeling like it's a bigger world, right? It adds that depth. There's choice. You might see a ship flying around, and you're like, wait, what is that? And I think that's cool. So I even as someone that doesn't care about the ships as much, I think it's great that they're adding a lot of ships.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd probably just toss in, I agree with what everybody said so far. I think, company for development, 2 things are needed: time and money. And the question is, how far do you go with both? And if you don't have one or the other, you tremendously impact the development of a game. Ship sales are what bring in the revenue. And I think that the accountability of how money is spent is based on us as consumers, what we want to spend money on. There are some of us who have stopped spending money. There are some of us who love going in and doing the CCU game. There are some people who just constantly melt and reflip, and then you get people who come in and bring fresh cash in. There has always been the argument about ships that have been on the backlog, and that's understandable from a consumer standpoint, because we're used to, once we pay for something within a certain amount of time, whether reasonable or unreasonable, we expect something to be delivered to us.
Yeah, and it should.
And
I don't
there are
think that's
some ships
unreasonable
that,
at all.
yeah. I mean, but I'll give you an example of the what's the Crusader, the
Starliner.
the Genesis, the Starliner, right?
Starfarer.
It'd be great to have the Starliner, or the Starliner, but transport gameplay isn't built out in the game, so it would just be a hanger queen for me. But as a consumer, I'd be satisfied to say, "Ooh, I've got my ship." But then the next thing is, well, it's not doing anything, and that'd be another thing. So in my mind, I'm like, well, until you get that transport stuff together, I'm okay with that. But other folks, from a consumer standpoint, are like, no, I waited that game. This 2015. It's 10 years later. I should have it in my hangar. Different people have different feelings about what they're willing to wait for and what they want delivery in. So, it's a mixed bag for me when it comes to the sale of ships. It brings in revenue. It keeps the company going. We're not having to pay a monthly subscription, which CIG is something said that they would try to avoid. And if it does that, that's fine. But I would love to see, one of the things that CIG did say was that when ships come into the game, that we start seeing the areas of them that they're supposed to be doing. That we start to see those ships being built out. I was impressed when I went on the Idris just this recently, even though I've been on it dozens of times. But the one that's hanging out at Area 18 right now, for the most part, many of the functions on that ship are working now. We've gone into the ship before and certain things weren't operating and working, but certain mechanics in that ship are working now. And that's taken time for that to happen. I would love to see other ships start to become that way. And I know it seems like real simplistic things, but you go on the C8R and the fact that you can open the drawers and store things in it. But I've got ships that I can't store certain things in.
Yeah, that's
or
the
certain
real
suit lockers. I would love for suit lockers to work so I could put environmental suits in my ship and not put them in the inventory area. There are little things like that they could do that are quality of life for me, that they've started to do a little bit in certain areas on ships. Some things they don't go into the notes. The patch notes, if you go into the brig on the Idris, all the jail cells work now. You can open a door to them from the control room. I didn't see anything about that in patch notes, but they've started introducing just little bits and bobs of things that can ultimately make these ships start to feel like I'll live on it. I'll store my stuff on it. I won't deal with the frustration of taking 10 minutes to get out of the spaceport. Now I can actually put everything on my ship and know that it's going to be there, and I can start my game there and immediately go to meet my friends, not have to be on trams and all these other things. I would love for HABs to be available so we could start renting them, some form of economy. There's little things that I would love to see them do. But the ship selling thing, that's about bringing money in. Whether they're new ships, concept ships, old ships, and I understand from a consumer standpoint, people want their ships delivered.
Trying to make money.
But that's a thing.
People want their Apollo before we get more medical gameplay.
Hey man, I think the Liberator doesn't really have an excuse anymore besides physics.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so I was hoping that was going to come when Pyro came. That was the ship I was really hoping was going to show up. I don't even own one. I just wanted it to be in so people could move their ships around, but alas, didn't happen.
Bummer. Yeah, I do think that the ship situation is an interesting one. There's a lot of different angles to look at it, and I think you guys have all done a great job of talking about them, so I won't bring it up. But one thing that I did see in chat that I think is really easy to forget is that every ship they make for the players in this game is also being made for NPCs. The Idris is a level. The Starfarer, the 600i, the 890 Jump, the Hammerhead, all of these ships are levels that will be used for missions, that might be used for little narrative bits. You might have a thing that literally just has you go on a ship and get transported to another planet, but you being on that ship along with the NPCs is still part of the game. And so even if they're making a Cutlass Steel that no player really wants to use, it's going to be freaking great for dropping off a whole bunch of cannon fodder for us to fight at some point. And so from that aspect, I think it also is helpful that they have so many ships. But I still do think that they got to be careful when it comes to balancing all these ships against each other when it comes to different component combinations, and then Maelstrom coming in, and you've got, you can add in different just combinations of equipment, components, commodities, all this stuff. That might start to get difficult, but I do think that what they're doing right now mainly is about making sure that the money stays coming and Squadron gets finished. I have to
say this: the Cuddy Steel was great on those platform missions in Oris, and those side guns were nailing guys left and right. That was the only time I ever really used it and enjoyed it, but it was a lot of fun.
Nice. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for today's show. I'd like to thank you all for coming. Thank you everybody who watched, whether you're live, if you're a supporter with us here on Discord, or if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube. Thanks for checking it out. We release this, we do usually do this once a month, but we've been a little slow on it, mainly because, like I said, we're doing the whole redesign. So we will be trying to get this out regularly once a month, but you can also check out our other podcast, Launch Sequence, which comes out weekly on the same channel. And now all supporters on both platforms get our podcast early, but supporters specifically on Space Tomato 2, if you become a member, you can see all the videos go live early. So that's a little perk. But before we do finally sign off, I'm going to give everybody the chance to drop, once again, their content and where they can find it. Starting with you, my friend, Mr. Void Dude, Mr. Voidy Vids.
YouTube, Voidy Vids. I'm not streaming as often these days. I might wing streaming now and then, which was twitch.tv/voiddude. But yeah, find me on YouTube at Voidy Vids. That's me. Gameplay stuff, piracy stuff, cringe stuff. That's me. Thank you.
Cringe stuff. Ship names. Always with
the right amount
names.
of cringe.
Tree, can you remind the folks where they can find your own podcast and content?
YouTube and Twitch, Tree0311, and then on Twitter, Tree0311-SC, and then I have a Discord as well that's very active, which invites are always open, so come hang out and be a part of the conversation. I'm going to be streaming more often, thankfully, as life has settled down. Playing games, but not just SC. I love co-op games. Anything where I can get together with the community and hang out and play.
You gonna try out Arc Raiders?
I got into
kind of popping off.
Oh yeah. I just missed that last test, but I'm looking forward to the next one, so I'm super excited about that. But I also I don't know if I'm gonna have time tonight, but definitely tomorrow I plan on streaming. I got into the Dune Awakening beta.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
So I
nice.
want to play that. Yeah, I've been hyped about that game, so hopefully we can get that to work. But yeah, come hang out for the podcast. I post everything about that on Twitter and in my Discord. Would love to talk more SC with everybody, but thanks for having me. And again, all my content, charity driven, support vets and combat PTSD.
It's really awesome. Thank you for that. And thank you for being on the show, dude. It's always good to have a talk with you. This dude,
Thanks for having me.
among most of the people I know around Star Citizen, I would say Tree is one of the equivalent obsessors of like words and details and looking up what's going on in the
Words
past.
matter.
Yeah, so it's a good time having a talk, man. Leaf, my friend, thank you
Hello.
for so much of the clips and making sure our videos have B-roll. Can you tell the folks where they can find your own content though?
Yeah. First off, this was awesome. Thanks for having me. It was great to chat with all of you guys. You can find all of my stuff basically all around at just LeafX. That's all of my social media. If anyone cares, I'm going to be going and doing a watch party for the RLCS actually right after this. So, but my main channel LeafX, I'm starting to delve. I was talking about it into other content. There's still Star Citizen content, but other games as well. So I've also started my Leaf SC channel where I'm just strictly focusing on Star Citizen content. I can do whatever I want there without worrying about if I'm hitting algos or anything like that. So Leaf
Yeah,
X
that's good
and
times.
Leaf SC, really. Yeah.
Awesome,
Thanks again
man.
for having me.
Yeah, guys, go check out the RLCS broadcast after this. Do it. It's really fun. Griffin, my friend, How about yourself?
Yes. Yeah. Once again, thank you once again for having me on with these wonderful gentlemen, good guys. I'm happy to see when I saw the list getting big. I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's going to be a great show. So I'm happy to be here with them. And again, Soul Citizens. Our shows are Sundays, 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Eastern time. We're not having one tomorrow because it's Mother's Day weekend, and we're giving everybody a break. But we will be back on the following week. And once again, thanks for having me on.
Of course. Once again, everybody, thanks for joining and checking this out. I hope you had a good time, got some good information from this. If you are here live, we're going to pass you on to yet another podcast where you can get some good information. If you are not here live, come join us live. It's good times. Otherwise, everybody, thank you one more time for being here. I will see you all next month. Bye-bye.